Sonoma County Wine of the Week, and we're at Kaluna Vineyards with David Jeffrey, winemaker and owner. And tell us about Kaluna Vineyards, where you guys are located, because it's a little tricky to find, right?
Yeah, well, Kaluna Vineyards is in the Chalk Hill growing area of Sonoma County. So we're up near Healdsburg, but actually on the very northeast corner of Windsor. But it's hard to find the first time, but
Right.
second time is easy.
I found it not too difficult.
Yeah.
The GPS was kind to me today.
Yeah.
And you guys are on top of a hill,
Yep.
and then you got the vineyards kind of down in a valley, kind of surrounding you, right?
Yeah, coming off these hillsides and ridge tops, we've got 17 acres of vineyard planted. This is a property that I came across 20 years ago, and it was pretty amazing to see at that time. It was completely undeveloped land. There was really no road up here. You had
Right.
to find your way up here in an all-wheel drive vehicle. And there were actually wild boar on the property first few times I
Oh,
visited.
really? Wow.
Yeah, it
Some
was
wild
pretty
pig.
cool. Yeah, very much so. But the property looked like it would really lend itself well to vineyards, and so we decided to go for it, and that meant a long process first of writing a little business plan and raising some friends and family money,
Sure.
but then going through a lengthy due diligence period of doing soil pit work
Hmm.
and pre-permitting work and making sure we could do what we wanted to do up here. But we were able to get it going, and in 2005 we planted the first of our vineyards, so now 17 acres of vineyards here,
Wow.
very focused on the so-called Bordeaux varietals, the Cabernet,
Right.
Merlot, Cabernet Franc. We have a little bit of Petit Verdot and Malbec.
Hmm.
And then on the whites, we have the Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon that we
Okay.
make the one
Well,
white wine
here's
from.
one of the whites
Yeah,
right
yeah,
here, if you want
yeah,
to show that to
sure.
everybody.
Sure, it's made in the tradition of the dry white wines of Bordeaux, which are a blend of Sauvignon Blanc and Semillon. And I make it that way too, meaning I barrel ferment it and barrel age it for about 6 months. But very little new oak is involved with it. In fact, the 2023 Kuna State Blanc just won the best of class in the
Wow.
North Coast Press Democrat tasting. That
Very nice.
regional
Very nice.
tasting we had here. Yeah.
Yeah, very nice.
Okay.
Now, your wine background is a little different. You're a New Jersey guy.
Yeah.
You and Bruce Springsteen, right? Yeah.
My best friend.
And eventually you make the move out to California, but you also made a stop in Bordeaux
Yeah.
to learn from the winemakers there before you
Yeah.
got headed here to Sonoma
Yeah.
County, right?
Yeah, well, that's right. I did, I made a commitment to go into wine after I really fell in love with wine very much in the early 1980s. I had a job for a while with Seagram, the big liquor
Oh, wow.
company, which also had a substantial wine division at the time.
Wow.
And they put me through this wine class there, which got me going. And it just became a great interest. And at one point, my wife and I made the decision we were going to come out to California and go through this process. So I went through Fresno State's enology program. And then I did work in Bordeaux for a while. That's something I really wanted to do because I collected those wines for so long. And I wanted to understand what goes on in Bordeaux versus what goes on in California when working with these same grape varietals.
Sure.
And so it was a really fun and interesting experience. And then we came up to Sonoma County and just by chance stumbled on this property. We were looking for something much smaller, but this one popped on the market at a time I was looking, and I'd become fairly knowledgeable about vineyard real estate, and so I just went up and looked at it, sort of on a lark, and
Right.
off we went.
Nice, nice. Now, you were talking about the difference between Bordeaux and California wines.
Yeah.
What are a couple of the major points of difference between
Yeah.
those two
Yeah.
wine
Well,
regions?
yeah, much of it is driven by the differences are driven by the different climates there, with Bordeaux historically being a bit cooler than we are on the north coast of California. But also their vineyard practices are a little different in the great larger areas of the left bank. They're planted on these very rocky soils with vines that they plant meter by meter spacing. So they've got so many vineyard or vines per acre or
Okay.
hectare, as they would say there. And yet the vineyard's not that crowded because these vines stay relatively non-vigorous because the soils are uh, less vigorous than our soils here. So it's really very interesting to look at a vineyard in Bordeaux because that really shows. I mean, that's a big difference in
Right.
what we have here. Generally, the winemaking, there are not really that many secrets in winemaking between the two regions. They're just dealing with issues of, their grapes tend to be a little more high acid, low sugar, and sometimes more tannic. Ours, with the greater sunshine of California, tend to be a
Sure.
little higher in sugars, lower in acid. But having said that, that's why I like this Chalk Hill growing area because it is somewhat cooler than other areas of California. For
Right.
instance, we're a little cooler than Napa because we're closer to the ocean
Right.
than is Napa. And so that helps us keep our sugars down and our acids up. And so, yeah.
Yeah, we are in the Chalk Hill region today. I can't remember if I mentioned that or not yet. And of course, that's a famous wine growing region right here in Sonoma County,
It's,
right?
well, famous, maybe on a relatively, relatively speaking. It's relatively small as one of the growing areas here, and and there is a predominant winery, a Chalk Hill Winery, which is the large entity in our area. But it is one that I really liked again
Hmm.
because of its location here. To me, it's in a sweet spot and again, relatively cool for growing Bordeaux varietals. There are a
Okay.
lot of people, my neighbors here, growing Pinot Noir,
Hmm.
and so it's a transitional area where it's warmer than the coastal areas to my left down
Hmm.
here, the Russian River Valley and the
Right.
Sonoma coast, and yet it's a little cooler than Napa. So it's an
Okay.
interesting area.
So it's kind of in between those
Yeah,
two
exactly.
regions,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
so is the climate.
yeah, exactly,
Oh, wow,
exactly.
that's great. I wanted to talk about some of the wines that you brought out.
Sure, sure.
So I will hand you some bottles
Yeah, yeah.
over this way, and maybe we
So
can talk about that.
yeah, we talked briefly about our white wine, and then the next wine I generally present, luckily you handed me that bottle, is the Kaluna Vineyards Cuvée, which is our Bordeaux blend that has all five of the red grape varieties we grow here on the property. I mentioned those earlier. And this is our largest production, but still only about 1,500 cases that we make on that one. And then let me reach maybe this one we'll
Okay.
discuss. So
Sure,
we
sure.
make a small bottling of a Merlot called Merlot au Reynaud, and au Reynaud essentially means dedicated to the Reynaud family. Those are the folks I work for in Bordeaux,
Oh, nice
in
tribute. Yeah,
Saint-Emilion.
yeah,
Yeah, and
yeah.
they were so great to me. I lived at the chateau and had
Wow.
all my meals with the family and the other workers there. So, yeah, I chose what I felt was our best Merlot block, and we used about 10% of our Cab Franc in this too. And so we only make a couple hundred cases of that one. And then maybe we'll talk about
Okay.
this one, Kuna Estate Cabernet Sauvignon.
Okay.
This is, we really consider our flagship wine because it's a selection of the best fruit on our property each year. And we have four different Cabernet blocks, which are quite different, different clones of Cabernet on different rootstocks in different positions around the property. So we treat them separately, ferment them separately, go to barrel, and then about 6 months after harvest, we'll pull samples from everything and do blending trials to put together what we think is the best Cabernet based blend. And in those trials, we'll bring in some of the other elements of the other red grapes we grow here because we think that adds a little bit of complexity to that blend.
Nice, nice.
Yeah,
Very nice stories about each individual wine
yeah,
and what you guys are doing, and how the climate is affecting the
yeah,
grapes to make the wines
yeah,
that you make.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think that's a very nice story, David. Did you want to talk about the Malbec?
Well, sure, we can do that. This is really kind of a one-off for us.
Oh, okay.
Well, no, it's fine because we try to bottle a little bit of it every year, and it's a very nice wine. But the story with Malbec, it's considered a Bordeaux varietal, but the reality is there's not much Malbec left in Bordeaux. But where I worked, we had some Malbec, so I blended some too. Every once in a while, and now fairly consistently, that vineyard gives me a little bit more than I need for the blend. So I had the idea several years ago to bottle a barrel of it and see how it went, and it
Nice.
went well. Very well received. So that's an interesting bottling, but I only make about 50 cases of that one.
Right. So small and
Yeah.
selective, and you got to get on it if that's something you want to put in
Yeah,
your
yeah,
collection.
yeah. All right.
Yeah, yeah. Well, David, this has been great. Can we go around the vineyard and
Yeah,
kind of look around the
absolutely.
vineyard
You
today?
should. We should take some shots for
Okay,
sure. All
that
right,
sounds
let's do
great. So
that.
we're going to do that, and we'll show you what the vineyards look like here. It looks like Little House on the Prairie here or something. I mean, it's this beautiful. You sit up on a hill, and it makes me think of Frontier days and pioneers coming out to mountain country in the West, and
Yeah,
it's absolutely gorgeous. I can't wait to see it myself.
yeah.
So,
All right, let's do it.